Today I would like to remember Daniel Naroditsky by looking at one of the greatest games that he has ever played. Daniel Naroditsky was a great chess player, a beloved person, a great teacher, and someone that has left a deep impact in the chess world and the chess community, and he will be missed. I um, I owe a lot to Daniel in terms of what I have achieved in chess, and because of that, a lot of what I have achieved in life, since chess is my work. And I'm truly devastated by the news. This is something that I have just heard about 30 minutes ago, and I really wanted to make a video about this to kind of, I guess, cope with it and remember Daniel for the great player that he was and celebrate one of his great accomplishments. Although one game is very reductive of the true impact that Daniel has had. Let's have a look. So this game here was played in 2019 by Daniel Naroditsky, over 5 years ago. And I found this game on his channel, actually. And if you want, you can go and have a look at his own analysis of it. I'm going to maybe go over it a little bit faster, kind of in a more superficial way, I suppose. But nonetheless, it's an incredible demonstration of Danya's spirit, his incredible skill, and his knowledge of the game, and his passion for it. Danya was playing the white pieces, and he entered Jobava London. He was not a fan of the London system, from what I can remember, which is my opening. But he was quite a fan of the Jobava London. The main idea of the Jobava London is very often to put a very quick pressure on the c7 pawn. And that's exactly what he does. He goes knight to b5 right away, and basically this move is asking for knight to a6, because otherwise the knight would simply be able to take there and fork the rook and king. And the whole idea of this opening is to make the position of this knight really bad. Danya continued with e3. There were some developing moves, and now this move a3, which he explains in his own video about the game as a move that is aiming first of all at stopping anything from coming to b4, but also to kind of get the opponent out of preparation. And the opponent plays knight to h5, aiming to win this bishop. Now, there is no way to preserve the bishop, because if you go this way, black is simply going to take twice. And if you go back, the knight is going to give itself up for the bishop. And as we all know, bishops are slightly better than knights. But Danya, being a very skilled player, decides to give up the bishop on his own terms, and he plays e5, inducing the move f6, and only now going back to g3. Now, he is still giving up the bishop for the knight, but the difference is that he has induced some weaknesses in the black position. Now, there is a pretty significant mistake by the opponent with c5, and the reason why c5 is a mistake is that it leaves the knight on b5 rather than pushing it away. So much better it would have been to play c6, and only after the knight goes back, you can now play c5. Instead, the opponent goes c5 right away. And Danya responded with the best move, and the only move that gains an advantage in this position, c4. And apparently this is a move that the opponent was not expecting, and he thought for quite some time here, apparently 30 minutes, he did not see this move coming, and he realized probably that he had made a mistake. Now, the reason why this move is so good is that it's trying to open up the center, or at least open up the position, despite Danya is about to lose one of the bishops for a knight. And we all know that bishops tend to be better in open positions compared to knights that are better in closed positions. But basically the argument of Danya is that he doesn't mind the opening of the center, the opening of the position, because these pawns are going to be targets for him that he can attack with this light square bishop. So eventually the opponent plays the move g6. A very surprising move. It is the best move, but surprising for me because it's kind of counterintuitive, I guess. The move g6 is very deep. It's aiming at blunting the bishop. So it's kind of preparing for the bishop coming to d3. It's creating a square for the knight to go back. It's defending the knight. The reason why this is surprising to me is that it seems to be opening up even more lines around the king and making this pawn structure quite weak. Now Danya went bishop to d3 anyway. Now the opponent captured in the center and eventually went back to b8. So the knight is trying to find a new path to enter the game via b8 and c6. Now at first glance it might seem like this move blunders a fork with knight to c7, but actually this is the blunder. Sorry, not a fork, but it seems like the knight can simply take the rook. But actually after knight takes g3, white is the one losing a piece, because if you take, you're going to lose this knight, and if you take the rook, well, now black takes this rook, and he has also gained a bishop in the process. So in this position Danya castled, and the opponent went knight to c6. Rook e1, activating the rook, and now knight takes g3. Finally the opponent decides to take the bishop. And by the way, he hasn't done that before, simply because there was no way to save the bishop regardless. Danya took, and now this move, rook f7. Imprecise according to the engine, but it's a move that is aiming at rerouting this bishop. Black doesn't really have a lot of other options really. The pieces are kind of paralyzed. And now Danya went back, knight to c3. A very high level move, because this knight seems very good here, but at the same time it has completed its task. There's no need to keep that knight on b5 anymore. The knight can find new life via c3. Now bishop to f8, continuing the plan of rerouting the bishop, and b4, simply starting to expand on the queen side. A move like queen to d3, trying to attack this pawn, would have been a massive mistake because of knight a5, attacking both the queen and the pawn. And after the queen moves back, let's say for example to a2, this exchange would benefit black, because the light square bishop was a very important piece in the attack of the black king. So Danya, being the incredible player that he was, he plays b4 instead, and now the knight reroutes to e7. Black is really struggling to find a placement for these pieces. Now queen to b3, adding pressure to this pawn, and king g7. King g7, I can't fully explain to you. I suppose it's trying to get away somehow from this diagonal. It's maybe trying to improve the king. I would have imagined that the bishop is trying to go to g7. Apparently this is good too. I don't know. This is Grandmaster's type of moves. Now rook to e2 by Danya. He's aiming at creating a battery here and attack this weak pawn here. And the bishop goes to d7, the rook comes to e1, the other rook comes to c5, and now it's kind of like a critical moment. Because at first glance, it seems like Danya can simply win this pawn here, like this. But he realizes that after bishop to c6, the position is not as good as it might seem. The queen has to move away, and now this pawn is going to be quite weak and under attack. And even if you, let's say, trade the queens, something like this, the position is not going to be easy to convert. Having one extra pawn when it's this weak, it's not that relevant. It's going to be really hard to try and push this for a win. And he was correct. In fact, he found, again, the best move, and another move that would be very surprising for most players. He relinquishes all of the pressure that he has built up for the entirety of the game on d5, and he pushes with c5. A great move. He realizes that the advantage has shifted, and that now all of a sudden his advantage is the pressure on the center here and the pawn storm on this side of the board. Now the opponent goes g5, and here we start to see the true brilliancy of this game. Danya comes up with a truly beautiful move. He plays rook takes e6, a brilliant sacrifice. And this is what is called a positional sacrifice. White's position is so much better than black's that having the rook in this position is actually so much stronger than having the rook compared to the bishop. So he gets a bishop and a pawn for a rook. Now this pawn is going to be very weak. This diagonal is going to be very weak. The knights are going to have access points into the black position, and in general white is doing great. Now the opponent plays a6, I suppose trying to stop some kind of push or infiltration on that side. Bishop to b1 prepares the battery. And now rook to c6. And according to Danya, this is where he thought he had made a mistake, because he realizes that if he goes back, this seems to be quite passive. Yes, white is still better, but if I take away the evaluation for a moment here, white is down on exchange, and despite the black pieces being kind of stuck against each other and white having open lines, it's not obvious whether white actually does have something or it only looks good. But Danya here finds once again the best move, and he sacrifices the second rook. Rook takes e7. Another incredible sacrifice. The rook can be taken 3 different ways, and he evaluated that every single capture would have given him a crushing advantage. The opponent took with the queen, and now he took on d5 with the knight. So again he gets a minor piece and a pawn for the rook. But now this pawn mass is very strong. d5, d6 are going to be devastating threats. The knight is already forcing the queen to move again. This queen is going to create a very strong battery on the light squares. This bishop is fundamentally useful. It's almost as if black doesn't have it. And we could say the same about this rook. So the queen moves and it pins the knight, and at first glance it seems like this is not going to be pleasant, and maybe black is going to be able to win the knight, but he had already calculated when he decided to sacrifice the rook that he can play queen to d3, another brilliant move. Of course, this is a little bit more straightforward. If the knight is taken, queen takes h7 is simply checkmate. So the knight cannot be touched, and black has to address the checkmate threat, and he did with king to h8. Now knight back to e3, trying to reroute to f5 and opening up a fork threat on the queen and rook. The rook goes back, d5 and d6. Now the engine flags this as a slight mistake, apparently because of b6, trying to mine at this pawn structure. But the opponent realizes that the position is actually crushing for white and that he is in a lot of trouble. And he decides that it's the moment to sacrifice some material back. After all, he has 2 rooks for 2 minor pieces. So he can afford to sacrifice some pieces. So he took with the bishop, the pawn took back, and then he went rook to c1 and sacrificed the rook back for the bishop. Now he has removed a lot of pressure. He wins this pawn as well, but we end up in this endgame where Danya has 2 knights for a rook and a quite exposed black king, and he follows up to create this kind of very surprising structure with his knight. He jumps in the position, and look at that, a cage around the black king with the knights and the black pieces. Very beautiful stuff. Now the queen moves away, and Daniel attacks b7 and h5, a fork, and the game is fundamentally over. This is plus 6.4. The opponent is out of moves. There are literally no plans for black. He has to somehow try to desperately hold on to this position. He takes on b7, the queen goes to g6, and now the final move of the game, queen to e7. Beautiful. The idea is that if the rook moves away, let's say here, after this knight check and the king moves, the knights are jumping in like this, and basically there's going to be a bunch of ways of, for example, winning the queen. Let's say king to h7, and I believe this is the move. Knight to e5. Well, there's queen g7 here, but regardless. So what? The move here is knight f5 apparently. Wow. And if the queen takes, you're basically just getting checkmated. Or, well, yeah, you can also win the queen like this. Maybe this was what I was remembering. An incredible game where Danya sacrificed both rooks, 2 positional sacrifices, almost in a row, just in a matter of 3 moves. So that's it. Danya left a very, very important legacy, and he will be missed. He will be remembered. I am devastated by the news, and I extend my deepest condolences to his family, friends, and everybody whose life was impacted by his work.